Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gents. We're going to look today at the lungs and the ventilation system, quite often known as the respiratory system. And by the end of it, what I hope you can do is you can label the lungs, know what the different parts are, and also to be able to say how the lungs are specially adapted for gas exchange. So, let's start off. Let's look at what the specification needs you to be able to do. So, what does the spec say? The spec says you should know the structure and functioning of the human lung and hearts. You should know the lungs are adapted for gas exchange and know the major parts of it. So the trachea, the bronchi, the alveoli, and the capillary network surrounding that. You already know some of that already, so some of this will hopefully be a bit of revision for you. At the end, there are some questions you can do online and submit to me via email just to test your understanding. Okay, so let's get started then. Why do we bother breathing? Why do we breathe? Breathing's hard work when you think about it. Well, the reason we breathe is for this reaction here. The reason why we call breathing the respiratory system is because it aids respiration. Your body needs energy, and to make energy it uses the process called aerobic respiration, and it needs oxygen to do that. It produces carbon dioxide and needs to be able to get rid of that carbon dioxide. So the whole point of the breathing system is to sort of get oxygen into your bloodstream to the muscles where respiration takes place, and then to take carbon dioxide away from all of those cells to expel it, because carbon dioxide is toxic to the body, so we have to be able to get rid of it. So we call it the respiratory system, but really is not. It's actually better to describe as the ventilation system, because you're ventilating gases in and out of the body. Okay, so we're going to look at that in a bit more detail. Right, so we look at the sections of the respiratory system. Obviously, at the very top, it shouldn't be particularly difficult. That's your nasal passages and obviously your mouth as well. And that's where, when you breathe in and out, enters and leaves the body. Okay, at the very back here, you've got number 3. You've got the epiglottis. Now the epiglottis is a tiny little valve, and what that valve does is that covers the larynx. So what that does is it allows air to pass down into the trachea, but it also allows food to pass down into the esophagus, but it prevents food from entering in the trachea. If you've ever sort of started choking on a bit of food, that's because what you've done is you've actually managed to bypass the epiglottis, and you've managed to inhale a small amount of food or a small amount of drink, and your body will then get rid of that by coughing profusely. So that's a very unpleasant feeling, and if you've ever done it, you'll know how unpleasant that is. But the epiglottis is designed to stop food going down the wrong way, food entering into the trachea. So 2 is the trachea, or your windpipe as it's otherwise known, and it's this flexible tube at the front here. You can actually feel it running down there at the front, and you can feel that it's ridged. It's very much like the ridges on the tube on a vacuum cleaner, and for exactly the same reason, because the change in air pressure will cause that tube to close if it's not reinforced. So that's why you've got those sort of cartilage rings to allow that to open. Okay, going down from there, we then pass to these sort of pleural membranes, and what they do is they line the lungs, and that's filled with a certain amount of fluid, and that provides a bit of a lubricant for breathing to take place. But at GCSE, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, surrounding that, you've got 5. You've got the ribs. The ribs are a cage that protects the vital parts of your body. Okay, for your body, the most important parts really are the brain, which is encased in its own pretty protective layer, which is the skull. You've got the rib cage, and that protects your heart and your lungs, because they're the bits your body cares about the most after the brain. So they're in there and they protect everything. But the other thing they do is they move, and they expand and they contract, and that changes the air pressure, which allows breathing to take place. Okay, between those, you've got things called the intercostal muscles. The intercostal muscles are the muscles that actually move the lungs in and out. They change the volume of the chest cavity to allow lungs to allow air to sort of flow in and out of the lungs. 7 here, you've got the lungs themselves. and they start with the trachea at the top here. They then split into the two bronchi, going left and right, and they then split down into smaller things called bronchioles, and at the end of the bronchioles are the alveoli. We'll look at those in a bit more detail later on. So you start off with one tube, which is the trachea. You then go down to two bronchi, which then splits into lots of smaller bronchioles, and they then end in tiny little things, look like cauliflower or broccoli, which are the alveoli. They're tiny little things there. At the very bottom, you've got the diaphragm. That's a sheet of muscle, and that is the thing that has a major role in changing the chest capacity, changing the size of that chest cavity. Okay, so those are the sort of parts of the ventilation or the respiratory system. Okay, so working our way through, what have we got here? At the very front, we've got the heart. We've then got our bronchi. An individual bronchi is a bronchus. They then split down into these smaller things called the bronchioles. The whole thing itself is called a lung. At the end, we've got the alveoli. Sorry, put that in the wrong place. There's a lung. And at the very top there, we've got the trachea. So those are the major parts of it. One trachea, two bronchi. They then split into lots of bronchioles, and at the end of those little networks, we've got lots and lots of tiny little alveoli. Okay, so that's the respiratory system, and you should be able to draw and label that if you ask questions on that in an exam. Okay. Right, so why do we breathe? Well, the reason we breathe is to get that oxygen in and get that carbon dioxide out. Simpler organisms have more simple respiratory systems and ventilation systems. We have a double pump system, which we looked at when we looked at the heart a couple of weeks ago. A fish has a very simple system. This has a two-chambered heart because it's a single circulatory system. So you've got deoxygenated blood go to the gills, they get oxygenated, they go around the body, the capillary network of the body uses it, uses that oxygen in respiration, deoxygenated blood goes back to the heart and round it goes. In mammals and birds, we have a more complicated process, which is ventilation, where we inhale and exhale air. So how does that work? Contrary to popular belief, we don't suck air in. We don't actually breathe air in. Air is forced down our throats by atmospheric pressure. So what happens inside the lungs is that the air pressure changes. How that happens is that can be explained and demonstrated with the bell jar model, and if we were in school, I'd show you our model of that, and when we come back, I will hopefully have a go at doing so. So we've got here a bell jar. This is an airtight jar. It's got two balloons at the bottom, and it's attached to a tube at the top. At the bottom is a rubber sheet. The rubber sheet is going to act as the diaphragm. So what's going to happen is, as the diaphragm is pushed inwards, then the pressure inside, or volume inside, decreases, which increases the pressure, and that means that air can be forced out of the balloons. So air rushes up that tube and is expelled, it's exhaled. When the rubber sheet is pulled downwards, that increases the volume in the bell jar, which decreases the pressure. Pressure inside there is now less than atmospheric pressure, so air is now forced inwards, forced down this tube here. So that's how it works with the bell jar. Well, the lungs work in a very, very similar way. Slightly different system, but it works in a very similar way. At the very bottom, you've got the diaphragm. The diaphragm acts like the rubber tube. When you exhale, it relaxes, and it relaxes, which then reduces the volume in the lungs. When you inhale, what actually happens is the diaphragm is tightened, it contracts, it's a big ring of muscle, and that then increases the volume in the lungs, which decreases the pressure, so that then allows air inwards. And as you breathe in, you can actually feel the diaphragm tighten at the bottom of the lungs. The rib cage will also change volume during breathing. So when you are breathing in, the rib cage expands the intercostal muscles, which are these muscles here and these muscles here. They cause that rib cage to expand, and that reduces the volume, which forces air down the trachea into the bronchi, into the bronchioles, and down to the alveoli. When you exhale, you relax those muscles, and that closes that cavity up, and then the air is forced outwards again. Okay, so those are the key parts of it. The diaphragm and the intercostal muscles, they change the volume inside the rib cage. So that changes the pressure, and air is forced inwards, and then air is forced outwards again. Okay? And there's the breathing there. You can see that taking place. There's the diaphragm contracting and relaxing, the rib cage expanding and contracting, and you can see the muscles contracting to help move the rib cage in and out. Okay? And that all together is how the air pressure changes inside the chest cavity with the volume changes. Right, so let's have a go at some of these keywords here. What I'd like you to do, if you want to have a go at this, just pause the video and see if you can work out which one it is, and then I'll go through them. So exhalation, what is exhalation? That's the process of expelling air from the lungs to remove carbon dioxide that is diffused out of the bloodstream. Okay, next one, respiration. What is respiration? That's the process of, sorry, clicking the wrong one. There we go, chemical process that takes place in cells to release energy from glucose. Okay, so respiration is nothing to do with breathing, all to do with getting energy being released from that reaction of glucose and oxygen. Okay, breathing, that is the process of getting air in and out of the body. Okay, so breathing or ventilation is where you're getting air into the body and then getting it out again. And finally, inhalation, that is the process of getting air into the lungs. Okay, so those are the four key areas here. Final thing to look at is how are the lungs well adapted for gas exchange. So this is an alveolus. Okay, the plural is alveoli, and we've looked at the adaptation of this before, but it's brilliantly adapted for really good gas exchange. So how does gas exchange take place? There's also diffusion, which we've also looked at. Diffusion is the movement from a high concentration to a low concentration. So at the very start, what we've got going on is air is inhaled. I've got a high concentration of oxygen in the alveolus. I've got a low concentration of oxygen outside. So you end up with a net movement of oxygen into the capillaries through that very thin sort of wall. So it's then absorbed by the hemoglobin in the red blood cells, like so. Okay, that forms oxyhemoglobin that can be carried around to muscle cells. The blood plasma has dissolved carbon dioxide in it. That's one of the waste products of respiration. And again, I've got a high concentration in the bloodstream, the blood plasma, a low concentration in the air. There's only 0.04% of carbon dioxide in the air. So again, diffusion from a high concentration to a low concentration, that will move that out into the alveolus. And the ventilation process of changing the capacity of the lungs moves that in and out. So hopefully we've covered all the key areas there of the key parts of the lungs. So the trachea, the two bronchi, going down to the bronchioles, going down to the alveolus, and we've just revised gas exchange and diffusion. So if you go on to Insight now and follow the link, there are some questions there for you to have a go at. Okay, thank you very much.